Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Knuckles the Echidna here, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more Let's Play of Sonic & Knuckles, or should I say Sonic & Knuckles standalone version for the Sega Mega Drive / Sega Genesis in Knuckles' playthrough, or should I say Knuckles' story of any sorts. So, last time we essentially did manage to traverse into not only Mushroom Hill Zone, but as well as Flying Battery Zone. In addition to that, much like in Sonic's story, we basically gathered all 7 Chaos Emeralds, so this means we can now turn into Super Knuckles, which means we can able to actually climb walls faster. So even though everything else checks out there, in addition to that though, I also invited Pauline for one of those videos at the moment, and then eventually at some point she will miraculously decide able to join in the entire The Mexi Toys crew, so everything else will be pretty much expected at this point. So today, for this video, is that this is going to be the grand finale of our Let's Play of Sonic & Knuckles, because, as you can tell, we're going back into Sandopolis zone again, except this time around though, we're going to be playing as Knuckles the Echidna, which also means about the fact that we might able to actually discover some other routes that Sonic cannot normally go into. So either way though, yeah, nothing else I can really say about it, apart from the fact that, well, for those of you probably wondering, yes, today's date of course there is the 21st of November today, in some cases in 2024 today, so you know what that means? Yes, happy 10th anniversary of the game's release of Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo Wii U. Yeah, it's been 10 years ago since that particular game first came out, and specifically in North America on the 21st of November in 2014. So yeah, while looking back on it though, I will say though, it still is a great game to me though, but I will admit it though right away. Oh, nice! We got ourselves a glorious jackpot! Alright, that was fantastic. Especially concerning for the fact that I believe we somehow got 100 rings or something relates to that, so I'll just go ahead and leave, because I really refused able to get that, you know, 3 Robotniks in a row again after the events of Sonic's story. I mean, my goodness, it was just all over the place, you know, especially concerning for the fact I just don't really like that particular bonus stage anymore these days, because, you know, it's incredibly luck-based, you know. So anyway though, while looking back and enjoying the forms of being Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U, I will still say it's much more superior compared to the forms of how it does on the 3DS version. I mean, don't get me wrong, it does have some cool parts here and there. However, there are some aspects I'm not overly keen on too much, like after playing through a lot of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate these days. Like, for instance though, the menus are pretty messy for the most part, especially concerning for the fact that not only is it a little bit confusing, but also every single time that when I booted up the game on my white Wii U model, that my god, the load times are really bad, especially concerning for the fact it takes like a few seconds to load until the actual menus has been loaded, and generally speaking though, yeah, I'm not too fond about that. In addition to that though, the classic mode is pretty messed up, especially concerning after the superior Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, because in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, it keeps things a little bit more interesting to say the least, depending on what characters you're going to be using, whilst unlike in Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U, not only because it's a little bit random and luck based, but it's also about the fact it's ridiculously long, way more longer than any other like single player modes, specifically in comparison to Adventure mode on not only Super Smash Bros. Brawl for its Subspace Emissary mode, but as well as the forms of Super Smash Bros. Melee for the Adventure mode for a singular character. So generally speaking though, well, it won't be nearly as long, well, assuming of course about the fact that we might come across into the worst completion, you know, things we've ever had to come across into after what I've decided to look back on it though. Like, my goodness, some challenges are pretty easy for the most part, but there are some of them are brutally difficult. Way more difficult, like, let's just say it's like a similar level as the forms of Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, in regards to the forms of difficulty for its completion requirements. So generally speaking though, but I still remember back in the day that I was incredibly excited about the forms of, I think they did state it, the forms of 50 facts, or technically 51, if you want to count the forms of Mewtwo is on its way for its DLC department, until specifically in 2015, that is, which I remember back then. That was incredibly excited for it, but then again, we'll discuss more about that until next year. So anyway, and also I do remember that time about the fact that the stage selection was actually not too shabby, apart from a few exceptions in between, mainly because they somehow introduced into ourselves bigger size stages like the Great Cave Offensive from Kirby's Fun Pack or Kirby Superstar if you lived in North America, and also I do love the actual additions, the forms of, I think that was actually, if I recall correctly back then, that Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U was technically the very first Super Smash Bros. Game, or technically the first ever Nintendo game to able to support Amiibo, which generally speaking of such though, have the 10th anniversary of the existence of Amiibo, which generally speaking of that I remember back then. It was quite cool, but unfortunately though, we didn't actually get ourselves our first bunch of Amiibos back then, just because obviously though back in November 2014, basically though there's a lot of scalpers out there back then, but thankfully though things gets a little bit more chilled out for the sake of the forms of the later Amiibo releases, especially during the forms of the Switch era. Although sure, there might be some other Amiibos are pretty expensive during that time still, like for instance there's the Gold Mario Amiibo for the sake of Mario Party 10, and in addition to the forms of other stuff here and there as well. And generally speaking, I was about the fact that we still do remember that the very first Amiibo we somehow got, that's what appears to be Luigi from the Super Smash Bros. Lineup. And generally speaking, that was one of those Christmas gifts that we somehow got, alongside with the forms of the game itself, alongside with the forms of Sonic Boom, Shadow Crystal, Kingdom Hearts HD 2.5 Remix for the PlayStation 3, and of course Ultimate NES Remix for the 3DS, and also the GameCube controller, the Super Smash Bros. Controller, with it does manage to contain long cord, so yeah, that's actually pretty swell, even though despite the fact that, well, I haven't used it that much anymore, mainly because at the moment right now, I'm currently going to be using my Indigo GameCube controller to able to match with my Indigo colored GameCube console itself, despite the fact that it does have some issues recently, mainly due to the faults of the batteries being dead, for the sake of the faults of the actual specific settings, likely the time of day, and what year was on, and etc. And that was also applies to the faults of one of my game systems recently, like specifically the majority of the 6th generation of systems, ranging from the Sega Dreamcast, Xbox, and now PlayStation 2 Slim. So generally speaking now, yeah, it's a little bit annoying, but it does not affect it on the actual gameplay that much though, which is kind of fortunate. But the most unfortunate thing for me though is that I can't seem to able to actually update my dates and stuff like that during the forms of the actual in-game system and stuff like that, which I think is a little bit of nuisance. Well, thankfully though, I can easily replace that for the Sega Saturn, because obviously though, the Sega Saturn is actually really self-explanatory, but compared to the forms of other systems ranging from, you know, the majority of the 6th generation of consoles like Sega Dreamcast, GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox, it does requires me to do a lot of modding, which as a result though, I'm not great at the forms of mods personally though. Well, I did manage to try that out when it comes to trying to fix that particular stupid resetting issue for the Sega Dreamcast, and I think it goes fine enough as it is, but not everything else is perfect by any means. So anyways, let's go through here to able to actually do some more wall climbing here and there, but thankfully though we can able to turn into Super Knuckles in this process to make this entire section a lot more easier. Well, despite that, we got to deal with this particular puzzle coming up, where basically that was about the fact that we do need to let the sand decide able to actually come in, because obviously though, after we get that big ring right there, and after going for this particular slide, I believe we might able to actually come across into the moment where the fact that we do need to, oh, there's some more platforms there, but I don't think it's possible we can make it up, because, well, that's what this section comes in. So either way, so yeah, straight to the point though, we need to activate the sand somewhere, because if you activate that particular timer right there, it actually goes by ridiculously fast. And straight to the point though, I don't think it's possible we can able to let that platform decide able to go onto this bit. So, because obviously though, it's not even higher enough. So we do definitely need to sort this out. And thankfully though, we can able to bust out this wall. And I get the feeling that, oh yeah, there are some ghosts. They are trying to able to actually like outright against you. There we go. So, because yeah, when you start the entire stage as Knuckles, specifically in Act 2, those ghosts appeared straight away, and generally speaking of that, they're trying to ambush you. And not to mention though, they turn into the forms of some devilish ghosts in a much more quicker method, unlike the forms of how it does in Sonic's playthrough. Basically though, it only just goes for about a short amount of time, so I digress. So, anyways though, another thing is worth noting for, in regards to the forms of while looking back on during the forms of in Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U, that I will admit though right away, that at first glance, when I first experienced the forms of one of those modes in particular, which appears to be Smash Tour, that back then I was pleasantly surprised and also excited to able to try that mode out back in the day, because it reminds me of so much of Mario Party, but more specifically it's like a Monopoly kind of version of Super Smash Bros. Like, basically though, it gets like checkpoints and all that stuff, you know, similar to the forms of how it does on those Spade, or in some cases suit spaces from the likes of not only Boom Street, but there's also one on the DS as well, which I couldn't think about on top of my head because it's been a very long time since we actually mentioned something relates to Boom Street, ever since in quite a long time ago, despite the fact that one of our videos is no longer there, mainly because the quality itself is not great, and on top of all that stuff though, the commentary itself is not exactly that too great. So either way though, and in addition to that though, it's about the fact that there's going to be a lot of well, emphasis on the forms of luck involved while looking back on Smash Tour, which I will state for this point is about the fact that Smash Tour every nowadays is gonna get worse and worse over time. Like, don't get me wrong, it's an interesting concept, but I don't usually go back onto that mode that much anymore, mainly because, well, not only is it incredibly luck-based sometimes for certain events, but it's also about the fact that certain challenges requires you to be able to actually do all sorts of stuff, ranging from KO'd the boss, and especially noticeable with recover your status with the Metroid that the Metroid did somehow took from you, and pretty much everything you might also able to expect. But luckily though, I did manage to able to accomplish those specific challenges on my spare own time, but still, no matter what though, I just don't usually, I'm just not a big fan of Smash Tour anymore. I mean, it is fine for what it is, but I much rather prefer Smash Run over the likes of Smash Tour in my opinion. I mean, not to mention though, the entire mode goes on for way too long, depending on how many turns you somehow set it. But, ironically enough though, that was before not only Mario Party Star Rush, but alongside with the forms of Mario Party the Top 100 as well, that you can able to actually move simultaneously depending on what number you get. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting for sure, which eventually later on NDQ managed able to stall their idea, but except the fact that Mario Party Star Rush and Mario Party the Top 100 is all grid based and everything if you manage to traverse into certain boards, so yeah, that's as far as I can usually think about it. Although in the Top 100 though, there's only one game board, which is not by much. So, anyways though, there's also another thing else is worth noting for actually, is about the fact that, well, after all, we've only got about 29 more days to go until Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie is on its way. And generally speaking, I'm still incredibly excited for it. And I'm sure that both Sonic and Tails, in addition to Shadow as well, are also going to be excited for it as well. So generally speaking, yeah, it's going to be a lot of hype involved. And again, we're probably not going to touch upon the forms of any spoiler details for the sake of time, just because no matter what though, we haven't got that long left now until that particular film is finally going to be releasing on the big screen. So either way though, in addition to that though, it's about the fact that also I've also noticed that apparently though, the producer of Sonic X Shadow Generations wants to remake Sonic 06? What? I mean, it's just far of speculation as far as this is concerned. I mean, if that comes true, I might be alright with it, but I will admit it though right away, hopefully it will not fix any of those, hopefully they're not gonna be able to bring back multiple glitches again. I mean, unlike any forms of how it does in the original release, or not only on the Xbox 360, but alongside with the PlayStation 3 as well, it is incredibly massive negativity when it comes to likely for its, well, you know, in terms of Sonic community, and not to mention those about the fact that, well, I think my guess is about the fact that when it comes to that particular speculation anyway, maybe they'll try to bring some more highlights for Silver the Hedgehog, if possible. I mean, relatively speaking, though, it's about the fact that until 2026, then obviously, though, Silver the Hedgehog will eventually become 20 years old, until whenever we get on to 2026, if possible. I mean, time will tell, though, especially concerning for the fact there's another one of those speculations with all his questions and all that stuff, though, for his interviews and all that stuff. I mean, then again, though, possibilities were endless until the future, but from now on, though, not right now, though, just because, after all, that we are now waiting for, not only for the Sonic Movie 3 DLC pack for Shadow Generations coming up, but as well as that, though, the Game Awards is also going to be on its way as well. I think my speculation for the Game of the Year award, when it comes to one of those games in particular, my choices will be Astro Bot and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because no matter what, though, both of these games, specifically for the PlayStation 5, has received really dang well in regards to the forms of not only sales numbers, but potentially speaking of with the reviews alike, which I know for a fact that Astro Bot is actually doing really dang well for the PlayStation 5, because obviously, though, it almost inspires by Super Mario Galaxy, except it's basically just a PlayStation version of Super Mario Galaxy, but you get the idea. Even though it's a shame about the fact I can't get that game anymore, just because, as we've already established that in the past, it is very unfortunate that we can no longer get the PlayStation 5 now, just because not only is it incredibly expensive, but it's also straight to the point, though, is about the fact that our TV is not compatible with the forms of HDMI 2.1 cable, at least as far as I'm concerned. But either way, that'll be a topic for a later time, if possible. So anyway, so now we've actually done with the forms of that particular godforsaken slot machine bonus game again. I mean, seriously, we're going to be seeing that a lot throughout the majority of the forms of this playthrough. And luckily, I think, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that after dealing with the forms of this mini boss fight right here, basically, though, in Act 2, I don't think it's possible we can able to deal with Eggman for that particular lava pit kind of segment like that. So anyway, though, and thankfully, though, with the forms of Super Knuckles anyway, this means we can able to tackle for this boss fight no problem. So anyway, also about the fact that there's one thing I suppose that Blaze the cat that she forgot to mention about ever since enduring the forms of in yesterday's video, after having a lot of trouble with the forms of the Welcome to Playing Sandopolis minions level because of the forms of this unexpected too much enemies on screen kind of segment, which I'm sure you probably already know what I'm talking about. Basically, though, one of those I would say it's the forms of the Cartoon Network show, which appears to be Courage the Cowardly Dog. Well, apparently, though, that particular cartoon has celebrated its 25th anniversary just recently, ever since in a couple of days ago. So yeah, it seems pretty interesting. Mind you, I still have not seen that particular cartoon for myself. Plus, it's mainly because no matter what, though, I'm more into the forms of other, like, shows recently, ranging from, not only for the sake of the forms of What If, at the moment, because currently right now, I'm actually watching the forms of the majority of Season 2 for right now, before we dive into the 3rd season until next month. So, generally speaking, I was about the fact that, and also not to mention, though, that me and Shadow and Silver did manage able to watch a heck of a lot of Deadpool and Wolverine, just before we've realized about the fact that there's going to be some more films coming out for the sake of Marvel Studios kind of stuff, ranging from Captain America, Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and much more. So anyway, so let's just go in and yeah, why not? Let's go to that bonus stage again. But thankfully, though, we got ourselves this little gravity ball one, because obviously, though, unlike the slot machine one, it just most able to mess me up beyond belief in the past, specifically though in Sonic's playthrough. But anyway, so yeah, kudos to the forms of Courage the Cowardly Dog did somehow became 25 years old during that time. So yeah, very appreciated about that. So anyway, another thing else is worth noting for is that one of those Nintendo Switch games has recently got confirmed its physical release. And that game in questioning is apparently it's supposed to be an indie game in which what appears to be body forms of Little Kitty Big City, and I suppose no matter what though is about the fact I believe the physical version is about to be out and during at some point until next year for some time. I mean, time will tell, especially concerning for the fact I don't usually purchase that much indie games as much. I mean, apart from few, like for instance though, I still got myself Cuphead, and in addition to Freedom Planet 1 and 2, and also not to mention though some other stuff in general for its third-party supportive games. So yeah, you get the idea for that point. So anyways though, let's just go ahead and become super right here, able to bypass the majority of those flamethrowers, and not to mention those about the fact that we've now become unstoppable, at least for now, because as far as I'm aware, as soon as we're able to make our way to the final 2 stages— No! I can't believe I just got crushed. Oh, that's a bit of bad luck right there. Oh gosh. I'm really hoping I can able to actually try to stay put for the majority of the time, but sometimes though, again, I was a bit too hasty. So anyway, let's try this again, but thankfully though— oh no. Oh, don't tell me I'm gonna die again. Oh, I died. Even with my flame shield! Oh, jeez. What is going on? Oh, jeez. I suppose this is likely at the the final stretching point, so sometimes, though, trial and error decides to come into play. So, I suppose it doesn't really matter to the grand scheme of things, because obviously, though, we've got quite a few lives so far, so generally speaking, I don't have to necessarily try to worry about it too much. I mean, it's just about the fact that sometimes, though, being so hasty can be felt a bit unpredictable at times, so— but I digress. But you'll see what I mean about the fact that if Silver decides able to go back on playing through, you know, Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Game Boy Advance, that also means about the fact that he might also come across into a lot of trial and error situations coming up, but then again, no, time will tell. So anyway, let's spin dash here, and suffice to say, we can now bust up these walls. And yeah, nothing else I could really say about it. Oh jeez, I totally forgot about these shifting blocks here. I do apologize for that awkward commentary sometimes because I, for some reason, just belched, but mainly because I've been eating too much grapes these days. I don't know if it's either the green grapes or red grapes. I think it's a lot of both, I would say so. So anyway, so let's go and glide for this long stretch right here. And fundamentally speaking though, we somehow made it towards the very end of Lava Reef Zone Act 2. But then again, no boss to be on sight, so instead we immediately jumping into the Hidden Palace Zone, and that was by far the quickest level in the game as well, just because, well, if we make all the way to the right, well, there is actually that little portal thing right at the center right there. So if we stand on it, this will pretty much lead us to the final level for Knuckles' playthrough in Sky Century Zone. So anyway, again, I do apologize for that tongue twist in the end, folks, but I digress. So yeah, we can't do anything with this egg robo, with this cockpit right here, because if we make it all the way to the right while getting caught by this crane, basically though, or that claw I should say, oh look, it's Mecha Sonic again. Except now we have to go through 2 different phases with Knuckles. So, yeah, for the most part, the first phase is pretty similar to the forms of how it does in Sonic's playthrough, except now we have ourselves the final boss theme music in the background. So, and also you can see the Angel Island in the background as well, to represent what the forms of Knuckles' homeland. So, at least if I'm assuming so anyway, though. But I will admit it though right away though is about the fact that, well, the first part of the fight is kind of tricky, but nothing even compares to the second and the final phase of the fight, because it looks like Mecha Sonic decides able to go all the way to the Master Emerald and managed to become super version of himself. So this means he's invincible for a while, and as a result though, yeah, you can't necessarily hit him unless if he turns back to normal. So yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a trickier as the actual boss fight is concerned, but as long as you were able to do a careful timing right there, then you should be alright. But if you accidentally miss one of those rings, then you're seriously going to be screwed. So no matter what though, yeah, if you do die at one point, then you have to restart the entire boss fight all over again, which also means you have to get caught by the actual claw thing all over again if you keep dying a lot. So, but regardless of anything else though, that's as far as we can able to say about the Forms of Sky Century Zone as Knuckles. So, yeah, thankfully though, we don't have to worry about the forms of some impossible to dodge attacks for Mecha Sonic. And there he goes. Whoo-wee, that was a definition of a close call right there. And so much so, Mecha Sonic has been defeated for reals. So, and relatively speaking though, is about the fact that we can now claim ourselves the glorious Master Emerald as Knuckles this time. And also, not to mention though, Sonic is now going to be piloting the Tornado. So either way though, and we'll deliver the Master Emerald right back into the Angel Island itself. And as a result, it looks like that the Angel Island is now going to be in the skies above for reals. So anyway, so yeah, that pretty much does it for our Knuckles' playthrough of Sonic & Knuckles as far as the standalone version is concerned. And let's give my final thoughts of Sonic & Knuckles standalone version. Obviously though, I still really enjoy this game as well, just like the Forms of Sonic 3 standalone, and of course, Sonic 3 and Knuckles combined, because obviously though, the zones themselves are still fun to explore, and not to mention though, the Elemental Shields are a welcoming addition for not only Sonic the Hedgehog 3 standalone version, but alongside with Sonic and Knuckles standalone version, and heck, even with the Forms of Sonic 3 and Knuckles combined as well. So generally speaking though, yeah, that's actually pretty swell, and the graphics are pretty much the same as the Forms of how it does in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 standalone version. So yeah, I have no complaints there, because the sprites, and especially noticeable with the level layouts, and especially noticeable with certain themes of the levels, are really fantastic. And not to mention though, the soundtrack is also pretty awesome as well. And also not to mention though, is that the controls are superb, and not to mention though, there's no any flaws whatsoever. So generally speaking though, well, aside from the forms of, you know, the game itself is still basically incomplete, just like the Forms of Sonic 3 standalone version. Like for instance though, they are missing some aspects of this particular standalone version of Sonic & Knuckles, like no save files, and on top of all that stuff though, no ability to play as Tails, and not to mention though is about the fact that there's no competition mode in here either. So generally speaking though, like no multiplayer and all that stuff. Kind of unfortunate though, but thankfully though for Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles combined managed to fix this every single aspect. And not to mention though is about the fact I still cannot believe I still despise the Sandopolis zone still. Although despite that, I did manage to did that zone no problem whatsoever. Because, you know, I already played this game loads of times already in the past, including with Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. So, yeah, I should probably still recommend experiencing not only Sonic the Hedgehog 3 standalone version, but alongside with the Forms of Sonic and Knuckles standalone version, if you so much more desire. And even not to mention, though, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, which is the definition of the, well, let's just say we'll call it Sonic the Hedgehog 3 Definitive Edition when it comes to combining those two games together in one cartridge. And generally speaking though, that would be a cool way to noticing this. So, anyways though, so yeah, thank you guys so much for watching of our Let's Play of Sonic & Knuckles standalone version. And this is me, Knuckles the Echidna here, and I'm from the likes of the Mexi Toys. Up next, in terms of our Sonic retrospective of Let's Plays, well, here's the thing, we were originally decided able to do Sonic Generations for the 3DS next, but I might hold it up for a moment, because next up on our list is the original release of Sonic the Hedgehog CD for the Mega CD. Because obviously though, I loved able to tackle through multiple versions of certain Sonic games, you know? So yeah, stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys until at some point soon. Bye.